Hi, this is Sturkey Sowers, Director of Education for Clark's Nutrition and Natural Foods Market. Welcome again to another Plus Program training series. And what we do in these programs is try to bring you some behind-the-scenes action, so to speak, of what we train our staff here at Clark's Nutrition. Today's topic, female health, part 1. So with female health, we can't not but think of a couple different things. First of all, you got to think about hormones, as well as osteoporosis and things of that nature. So we're going to kind of cover a lot of those particular topics. One of the things I want to focus on is hormone health. And so when we think of hormone system, we have to remind ourselves, so to speak, of the ovulatory cycle. So when we look at the ovulatory cycle, there's 4 phases. And those 4 phases, such as proliferation, luteal, as well as premenstrual and menstruation, there's a whole cascade of things that go on with hormones. So let's talk about hormones. And let's kind of maybe dissect that a little bit. What are hormones? Hormones specifically are chemical messengers. And you might remember that from the last time when we had some neurochemical things that we talked about in one of the Plus Program training series. But what hormones do is they actually communicate a message, so to speak, from cell to cell, or maybe from an organ to the cell, as well as from the brain to cells. So when you look at the ovulatory cycle with females, you look at the cascade of events or the roller coaster of events when it comes to hormones. And so they have a tendency, they go up and they go down, and they're kind of all over the board. One thing to remember about hormones as well as too is hormones are emotions. So when we keep that in check and we see these imbalances and balances of hormones, we also remember that some of the emotions have a tendency to follow suit with that. So with that, let's look at a couple different imbalances that we see when it comes to hormones and maybe some imbalances in the ovulatory cycle system. So the first thing on the list is called PMS, or premenstrual syndrome. For years, this was considered just to be an estrogenic factor, too much estrogen, not enough progesterone. And now we definitely know that there is no one causative factor. In fact, we do see estrogen and progesterone imbalances, as well as we also see follicle stimulating hormone imbalances, as well as serotonin, which of course is a neurotransmitter. A lot of people lately have focused on the serotonin, and a lot of other doctors and professionals are kind of focusing on maybe a myriad of different types of things. Well, what are some of the symptoms that go along with PMS? Well, there's typically the moodiness, the irritability, as well as maybe some abdominal complications. In addition to that, there also might be some headaches and some inflammation and pain throughout the body. So when we think of that, there's a lot of different things that are there. And as we were saying, the causative factors might be a hormone imbalance as well as some other different things. So one thing we know for sure, though, when we look at the diet and we look at some things about PMS, there's some definite factors that are real. So number 1 on the list is 62% of individuals that suffer from PMS typically have a high refined carbohydrate diet. So what does a high refined carbohydrate diet look at? So it's look like, so to speak, it's going to look like a couple different things. Number 1, a lot of white flour, as well as pastries, cookies, donuts, coffee, things of that nature that are really going to kind of maybe add to the complexity here. And one of the reasons why is we know with high sugar, it has a tendency to cause complications with the liver. And the liver is the processing center for a lot of these hormones. In addition to that, 275% of the individuals that suffer from PMS have a very high sugar amount. So those 2 factors alone can definitely be part of the problem. So let's go a little bit further. We also see that there is a large percentage of individuals that typically have what we call a fatty acid imbalance, where they're consuming too much saturated fats. Saturated fats typically come from dairy products as well as from red meat and things of that nature. The other thing that we also notice that there's a reduction in the amount of zinc as well as iron, and especially vitamin B6 when it comes to PMS sufferers. So one thing we know for sure, PMS has a different symptom, so to speak, for almost every person. And typically when we look at PMS, it doesn't really get clinically diagnosed unless there's a lot of symptoms for a long duration of time. So a lot of times people think they have PMS, but maybe they've only got symptoms for a short duration of time. So being one of those individuals, if you are, you might want to consider looking at the list and maybe having a look at that. One of the final things to remember too when we look at PMS, we know for sure too much salt, too much caffeine, as well as too much alcohol can really exacerbate the symptoms as well. All right. So next on the list is what we call perimenopause. So perimenopause is the beginning, so to speak, of menopause. Menopause, of course, means that the ovulatory cycle, or the release of eggs, which of course is for fertilization and implantation and for childbearing, actually starts coming to an end. And the thing that we have to remember about perimenopause is this: it can literally last from 5 to 15 years. So oftentimes it gets confused with PMS. The symptoms are similar to PMS, with the addition of 4 other strong symptoms. Number 1, typically there's some headaches as well as forgetfulness, as well as some sleep disorders. In addition to that, we also have a tendency to start seeing what we call hot flashes or vasomotor instabilities. So what does this mean? Well, it means that you're coming to the ovulatory end or the end of ovulation cycle, so to speak, and the body's kind of starting to prepare itself for it. Remember that when it comes to menopause, this is a normal phase. It's not like a disease phase. It's just a normal phase in life. And so one of the things that we can do when it helps with when it comes to hormone balancing and when it comes to PMS as well as it comes to perimenopause is we can definitely consider some dietary things. Number 1 on the list is let's get rid of the sugar. Definitely a causative factor in exasperating some of those systems. The other things that happens too is increasing the amount of soy foods, at least 1 serving a day. We know soy has gotten a bad rap in the last couple of years, but we do see some great things with soy when it comes to phytoestrogens and kind of helping to balance the hormones in the body. The other thing is adequate amounts of omega-3 fatty acids in proportion to those saturated fats. The omega-3 fats have a tendency to reduce inflammatory cycles and might actually help to reduce the symptoms. What are some of those omega-3 fats? It's going to be fish, especially in the form of salmon as well as cod. In addition, also as flax and chia seeds. And then finally, some herbs that might be of benefit as well too. Some of those herbs are chasteberry. Chasteberry actually has a tendency to actually balance the hormone system, as well as Dong Quai, which has been used for thousands of years to balance the hormone system. And finally, vitamin B6. B vitamins help with stress, but B6 in particular helps to balance that hormone system in the liver so the body's in a position where it can constantly manage those estrogen and progesterone. This is Starkey Sowers, Director of Education. Thanks for watching another Plus Program training series.